Kent Nelson visits Madame Xanadu's fortune-telling shop in New Orleans at night. While walking, he keeps looking at the picture in his pocket watch, which is later revealed to be his late wife, Inza. He meets with her, hoping that she could make contact with his dead wife, to which she agrees for a hefty fee. Initially optimistic, Nelson exposes Xanadu as a fraud, having seen through her tricks using tire jacks and a wind machine to simulate a spiritual presence. He expresses his disappointment, claiming she has the perfect aura for the work he hopes for her. Xanadu is outraged by his accusations when suddenly the villain Abracadabra shows up and abducts him. Xanadu runs screaming when they both disappear before her, to which Nelson's cane also disappears. At Mount Justice, the boys are busy with combat training, whereas Superboy has finally bested Aqualad. Miss Martian tells Artemis that she notices the romantic connection she has with Kid Flash. Suddenly, Red Tornado arrives, and Kid Flash asks him if he has a mission for them. Red Tornado claims that mission assignment is Batman's responsibility. With Batman on patrol with Robin in Gotham, Aqualad convinces him to help on the mission. Red Tornado debriefs them on the mission to search for Kent Nelson, who has gone missing for 23 days. He claims that Nelson is a charter member of the Justice Society, the precursor to the well-renowned Justice League. Aqualad quickly realizes that Nelson is Earth's Sorcerer Supreme, more known as Dr. Fate. As a man of science, Kid Flash makes fun of magic and claims that it isn't real. Red Tornado suspects that Nelson may simply be on one of his walkabouts. With its caretaker missing, he worries that the Helmet of Fate, a powerful artifact, is left unguarded. When Miss Martian gladly accepts the mission, Kid Flash pretends to like magic. He tries to impress her, knowing she is interested in the mystic arts. The team headed for Salem, where Red Tornado's coordinates pointed them, but they found nothing. In a nearby theater, Abra is torturing Nelson for access to the Tower of Fate. Tikal, Clarion's cat, hurriedly returns to its master to report that the Justice Society has arrived. Despite days of torture, Nelson refuses to give in, barely hanging in there, and insists that his friends will come looking for him. Meanwhile, Aqualad realizes that the key Red Tornado gave him was the answer. He inserts it in an invisible keyhole, revealing the Tower of Fate, to which Clarion and Abra follow them inside. Inside the tower, they are quickly greeted by a spectral image of Kent Nelson, who asks them why they have come. Trying to impress Miss Martian, Kid Flash claims they are true believers of magic and have come looking for Dr. Fate. Suddenly, the ground disappears, and they fall to a lava pit below them. Artemis grabs Aqualad and uses a grappling hook to cling to the wall, while Miss Martian catches Kid Flash and uses her powers to fly. Superboy clings tightly to the walls and barely stops before falling into the pit. Aqualad claims that his and Miss Martian's physiology is susceptible to extreme heat. When Miss Martian struggles to stay afloat, she realizes they haven't answered the tower's guardian correctly. She explained that Red Tornado had sent them to check on Kent Nelson and ensure the Helmet of Fate was safe. Suddenly, the lava pit disappeared, which surprised Aqualad and the others. When Kid Flash is flirting with Miss Martian, Artemis calls him out for lying to the tower's guardian. Kid Flash admits that he doesn't believe in magic and that science can explain everything. Aqualad vouches that magic is real, having studied for a year at the Conservatory for Sorcery in Atlantis. He claims that magic created the skin icons that power his water bearers, but Kid Flash explains it's simply a case of bioelectricity. Kid Flash claims that even then, people used to believe fire was magic until they explained it with science and replicated the process. Artemis tells him he is so close-minded for someone who can break through the sound barrier, but Kid Flash claims that his powers are not magic. He simply recreated Flash's incident, during which he gained his powers. Aqualad tests his theory and opens a trapdoor underneath the floor, revealing a snowy landscape. Despite the evidence, Kid Flash refuses to believe in magic and explains that they are in a pocket dimension. Suddenly, Nelson's cane appeared before them, but when Artemis and Kid Flash tried to grab it, they disappeared and were teleported elsewhere. Miss Martian wonders why Kid Flash doubts magic, to which Aqualad explains that he uses science to control things he can't comprehend. Acknowledging the existence of magic is to relinquish the last vestige of that control. Walking in the snow, Aqualad, Miss Martian, and Superboy find a door leading back to the tower. Meanwhile, Nelson leads Clarion and Abra through a winding staircase, hoping to buy time and lose them in the maze. When they realize he is leading them in circles, Abra tortures him again when Artemis and Kid Flash appear nearby with Nelson's cane. Nelson recovers a bit of his power and flies towards them. He then breaks free from his restraints and escapes to an elevator, leaving Clarion and Abra behind. Nelson informs them that they face a powerful enemy with tremendous magic powers. Kid Flash claims that Abracadabra is a nobody and explains how Flash proved that he only used futuristic technology to make it look like magic. Nelson agrees, but points out that the enemy he referred to was Clarion, nicknamed the Witch Boy. He claims that Clarion is a Lord of Chaos, the ultimate enemy of a Lord of Order like Dr. Fate. When Kid Flash is skeptical about him being a Lord of Order, Nelson claims that he isn't and is simply a host body to one. Nelson informs them that Clarion is after the helmet and worries that should he get it, he will turn the planet into his playground of pandemonium. When they stepped out of the elevator, they walked toward a giant bell in the center of the room. Aqualad and the others emerge from a trapdoor and reunite with Artemis and Kid Flash. Clarion and Abra also catch up and suddenly attack them. Although they managed to dodge Abra's attacks, Kid Flash helped Nelson up, and he rang the bell with his cane. They then walk through it, to which Clarion follows them inside and teleports them to the roof with the helmet. When Nelson reaches out for the helmet, Clarion attacks him out of nowhere. After chanting some words, Nelson creates a magical barrier to protect them from Clarion's attacks. Nelson collapses as soon as he puts up the barrier, and Kid Flash catches him. Before he dies, Nelson explains that the barrier will give him enough time to do what is needed. Kid Flash is puzzled by what he means, to which Nelson tells him to have faith in the things he can't explain and believe in what he can no longer deny. With Nelson dying in his arms, Kid Flash refuses to give up and provides CPR to revive him, but fails. Clarion continues attacking the barrier, to which Miss Martian telepathically reaches out to Kid Flash, asking him to bring Dr. Fate. With the others captured by Abra and Clarion nearly breaking the barrier, Kid Flash realizes what he must do. Clarion then channels powerful magic to break through the barrier, finally. Kid Flash understands this is a test of faith and grabs the helmet, believing this is destiny. When he is about to put on the helmet, Clarion warns him that he will never get it off if he puts it on. Kid Flash still puts it on despite his warnings when he is suddenly teleported into a dark yet calm abyss. He tries to understand it all when Nelson shows up and explains they are inside the helmet. Nelson confirms that he is dead. Once everything is settled, his spirit will ascend to go where all the dead go and reunite with her late wife. When Kid Flash starts to panic that he might be dead too, Nelson explains that he is still alive, although his soul no longer controls his body. He claims that his body is now controlled by Nabu, the real Dr. Fate, the master of the helmet, and a Lord of Order. Nelson and Kid Flash watch as Nabu fights with Clarion, a battle between a Lord of Order and Chaos. Nabu claims that the battle is pointless, with Clarion failing to take the helmet before it claims a new host. Clarion refuses to give up and continues to attack, placing his hands on the ground to attack Nabu with stone pillars on opposite ends. Nabu emerges unscathed and attacks Clarion, but he materializes and attacks him from behind. When Nabu took a direct hit, Kid Flash also felt it, forcing him on his knees from the shock. Nelson explains that it is still his body, so if Nabu loses, he too will lose his life. As the fight drags on, Clarion proves stronger, as Nabu can only dodge and block his attacks. When Clarion keeps attacking, Nabu erects a magical barrier, but it too breaks down. Nabu flies into the air, but Clarion still hits him. Clarion claims that Nabu's host body is not suited for him, who has zero affinity for magic. He then channels powerful magic to summon a storm above them that continuously attacks Nabu, even with his barrier. Seeing Clarion argue with his pet cat, Nabu realizes that Tikal is Clarion's anchor on the earthly plane. Nabu explains that it is difficult for a Lord of Chaos or Order to maintain their presence on the physical plane. He claims that while he is bound to the helmet and uses a human host, Clarion uses a familiar as his. Clarion tries to distract him, but Nabu tests his theory and attacks Tikal. Clarion claims he can't believe he would resort to attacking a defenseless cat, but Nabu explains that Tikal is not an average cat. With Tikal weakened, Clarion slowly fades from existence, to which Nabu claims that he would soon disappear without an anchor to this reality. When Nabu tries to finish it off, Clarion retreats with Tikal and disappears. Nabu then returns to the tower and uses his powers to make Abra's clothes and technology disappear. Without everyone freed, Superboy then knocks him out with a punch. After the battle, Kid Flash wonders why Nabu has not yet removed the helmet. Nabu claims that Earth needs Dr. Fate and doesn't plan on releasing his body. Nelson explains that Kid Flash is not the right candidate to be his host. He claims the boy belongs to the world of science and would not be compatible with the one called the Sorcerer Supreme. Nabu agrees, but claims he is displeased with being hidden away and isolated for decades. He argues that chaos must not be allowed to reign. Nelson agrees and proposes to have Kid Flash take the helmet and ensure that he's put to good use. In exchange, Nelson will keep him company until they find a better host. Kid Flash feels terrible for Nelson to be stuck instead of being reunited with his late wife. Nelson explains that it will be alright as he will soon reunite with Inza for eternity. Before Kid Flash returns to his body, Nelson advises him to find his special someone who will not let him get away with anything. At the cave, Kid Flash brings back the helmet and puts it on a shelf. Artemis wonders why he brought it back when he doesn't believe in magic, which he claims is a souvenir. Despite everything he experienced, Kid Flash still claims that there is no such thing as magic, which irked Artemis. When she walks away, Kid Flash is reminded of Nelson's final words and thinks that Nelson described Artemis. When Miss Martian walks by, Kid Flash quickly runs after her. He tells her he has bought tickets to a magic show and continues flirting with her. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.